morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning into another Supatease video. And in today's video, I'm going to be breaking down the Resto Druid, what has happened to it so far throughout the midnight beta. How do I feel about it? How strong is it likely to be? What would I like to see changed with it moving forward? And how good of a fit would it be for you as a player? Because obviously making that big decision to pick a class for the next expansion, it's an important one, so you don't feel like you've made the wrong one, something that's too overwhelming or something that ends up underperforming or not able to do the content that you want to do as effectively as you'd like to do it. So it's always a good idea to keep tabs on the changes that are coming forward for the classes moving forward, because these are the things that are going to determine those results for you. So as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. Now, I will say, out of all the healers that I've played so far, Resto Druid was dramatically different, the most dramatically different than the healers that I have played so far. And I've played a little bit of Holy Paladin, I played a little bit of Restoration Shaman, and now Resto Druid. And I'm trying to hone in on the healer role over these next couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks, because obviously the healer role is receiving the most amount of change. And it's the type of change that I hope that they can be successful in achieving, whether it's PvE or PvP. I used to be a main healer. I've won tournaments competitively. I've played at the top level of the game, PvE and PvP as a healer. And there are things about healing that I like. I really like, attrition style healing, where the health bars are not always at full or they're instantly zero, but they're always going a little bit down. They're always going a little bit up. And you're thinking about these little micro decisions on who should I target here and where should this heal go there. And for me, that's what made healing the most fun. And then obviously balancing in a couple of globals to do damage, or a couple of globals to get crowd control and disruption. That is what made healing fun for me. Healing started to become a lot less fun when everybody's at full health and I'm kind of just sitting there waiting until the one shot's going to happen. And I'm just like, oh no, it's like the boogeyman. He's going to come out of the bed and he's going to get me. And I got to like preemptively activate 10 cooldowns so my partner doesn't die 100-0. Those are really like that dynamic shift could completely revolutionize the role and possibly its popularity, which is then going to make it easier to build groups. It's going to make queue times faster. So I really hope that they can hit that level of tuning successfully. I will say, given that we're like, halfway through beta, maybe not even halfway through beta, that I think they are starting to get close throughout a couple of the matches that I was playing last night and the damage that I was anticipating. I think they're getting close, and this has been a goal of theirs for multiple expansions, so I'm always concerned that maybe it's just not going to happen and we're just going to go back to one-shotville. But right now it feels like they're pretty set on making this happen with the cooldown removals that I've seen from classes and the types of healing adjustments. Now the first thing about Resto Druid that we have to talk about that is completely different is that like your whole talent tree on the Druid side, like I couldn't even come up with an optimal build. Obviously, like we got really limited stuff because you can't use add-ons. You can't really do much with simming. You kind of just have to like plug and play and see what is strong, what feels good overall. Now, the way that I tried to do that originally was with the Apex talents. The Apex talents are the new powerful talents. And this one focuses around Lifebloom. So I was thinking like, okay, then I probably want to pick talents that focus around Lifebloom. And it's basically bringing back the stacking mechanic from TBC with Lifebloom, except it's automatic. So when you put Lifebloom on yourself, you'll see it at the top right here in the buffs or when you have raid frames enabled, but it will stack up over time. So you can see now it's stacked up, and it also summons efflorescence below your feet. So Lifebloom does like 20 billion things. It's easily your most important button, and I do like the stacking mechanic. I think that's really important because it adds like a pretty big decision-making process as far as like who you're going to allocate that Lifebloom to, but not in a way like it did before where you had to spend a lot of globals, right? Before it used to be like Lifebloom, 3 globals on that target were now allocated, and then you had to switch those 3 globals to the next one. It's not like that anymore. It's just, okay, this guy seems to be the priority target from big damage. I want my Lifebloom to be there, and there's a nice, interesting choice there. So the stacking mechanic is cool. It's a nice little flashback to mechanically how it was in the past without being too mechanically demanding like it was in the past. And I do actually like that component of the Resto Druid I like. I think the efflorescence being summoned from Lifebloom also helps them balance Lifebloom in PvE, where it's typically considered very weak because it doesn't have much of an AoE component. Now it puts efflorescence, which is one of your strongest AoE healing mechanics, and it does it automatically, which means you're going to get more globals to do other things. Whether it be attacking, and you've got a lot of very interesting things when it comes to attacking. I think that's where Resto Druid's going to shine if you want a particular playstyle, is how you're able to finesse your damage in. But this change to Lifebloom very integral to helping Lifebloom's viability in PvE, and then also just being a really cool decision-making process in PvP or PvE, and obviously for your opponents against a Resto Druid to respond and react to seeing where the Lifebloom is at and where it's going, and it is very strong. I think Lifebloom is your number one heal, at least at the moment with the builds that I was playing for it. Now, some other things that are going away, which I haven't played Resto Druid in quite a while. You know, I was talking about my past with it, but it's been quite a while since those times. But Tranquility no longer is immune to interrupts, and this might have been changed prior to the expansion, but this is something that I logged in, and so, you know, we've all gone in and out of playing WoW at certain periods of time, so you might expect the spell to be able to do this, and now it doesn't, and da-da-da, right? Like, so for me, that was like a big thing where like you can't go immune to kicks. You can go immune to knockbacks, but you can't go immune to kicks. You can get a little bit of cooldown reduction on it. But Tranquility does heal for a substantial amount again. Similarly to like it was in TBC. It seems like it's taking a lot of iterations from like the tuning of the past. So like sneaking off and getting this spell in an area where you're safe from being disrupted is likely going to be a core component of the class. And it's just that classic AoE heal. However, they have removed its stacking hot effect as well. And you'll notice that they've removed a lot of just extra kind of proccing heal over time effects, and that's because they changed your mastery. So now it's not as important. You know, it has a DR at least with how many hots you're stacking onto the target, which I think is good. This is another issue with a lot of classes that like they're top heavy on their stat allocation. Like you just want only mastery or only mastery, only verse, and the other two just they may as well not exist. And this is something that they're trying to like tune, which I think is a good goal to go after, so that if you want to build your druid to be a crit druid, you're not just like 2,000% worse than if you were wearing mastery, right? Like, I don't think you'll ever get them exactly the same, but like the gap can't be that massive. Otherwise, you just feel like you wasted your time gearing it. Maybe you thought it was going to be fun to do like a crit, maybe damage build and try and get like some big convokes or something like that. But then the build just doesn't work at all. So I think I like that change. It also means that haste is a little bit more accessible, and haste is always a really fun global, especially when you're just stacking hots over onto multiple targets or you're trying to cast cyclones in PvP situations. So my hope is with this mastery change that we'll be able to actually take a little bit more haste or even a little bit more verse to get more damage, maybe play around with crit. Again, crit in PvP kind of falls off just because it's already, you know, nerfed right off the top because of the RNG elements of that. But that's a big component to take into consideration for Resto Druid, is that basically it's going to take a while before people hone in and lock in on a build. I think you're not going to just move it and copy Control C, Control V and be having the same type of play style. Next thing is that Cenarian Ward is gone, and with Cenarian Ward being gone, Verdant Infusion felt really weird to me because that's what I had used it for a lot of the time. Now, obviously, Cenarian Ward I think has been nerfed a lot in the War Within, so it wasn't even really like a strong heal, but now it's just completely out of the game. So Efflorescence isn't a keybind anymore. Cenarian Ward isn't a keybind anymore that you have to worry about. Verdant Infusion got moved up here with Prosperity. So depending on like if you're doing talents where you get proc Tree of Life from using your Swiftmends, you might want to rotate between these. I did notice some downsides with this Prosperity because they've added a new animation, so to Soul of the Forest. And Soul of the Forest was basically when you Swiftmend, your next regrowth or rejuve is super juiced. So when you consume the rejuve, right, you get Soul of the Forest, and then you can apply the rejuve. You can see in the top right here, it's got a different icon. And I really like that because this makes it easier to know where your super juiced rejuves are on the target frames. I really like that. I think it's great that they've done that div for Feral Druid as well, where your Tiger's Fury Bleeds they have a different color on them. But obviously with your hots being consumed, sometimes you have to be careful that Swiftmend is also consuming that super juiced rejuve. And I don't think it's like it used to be where Swiftmend would heal based on the remaining healing. So it just like eats up your biggest heal. I think honestly maybe adding that flavor back where if you Swiftmended a big hot, that was Soul of the Forest, the Swiftmend healed more, because right now it just feels really punishing if you accidentally consume it because you need like a little bit of an emergency instant heal. It felt a little bit punishing, but then otherwise you could run Verdant Infusion, which then just extends those heal over time effects. But because we don't really have a lot of hots, like for the most part, if you're not playing double rejuve, like at most, you know, you're gonna have 4 hots, which maybe is good. You know, there's so many buffs, we're tracking so many hots, it gets like so annoying and difficult to track it across multiple targets, right? I think it's probably good that they're kind of bringing it back to the core of what the specialization was originally. A downside though is in environments where your hots can be removed, like purges. I think you're gonna be very, very susceptible to that. Now I do think you have passives where when you get purged, you basically get like a little bit of extra purge protection. I think it's just baked into your class baseline. I don't even see it. I don't know why it doesn't show up, but I did see it pop up when I was playing. And the purge protection is pretty strong, and I think that as long as they use that as a tuning adjustment, depending on how weak we are to purge, that it'll probably be okay. But it was just a concern because there are very many big purge mechanics in the game, and Druid could just fall prey to that. Next one is that Grove Guardians, or previously Force of Nature, these aren't a keybind anymore. So no Cenarian Ward, no Force of Nature, no Efflorescence. That's just 3 like main healing rotational keybinds just straight off the top. It spawns off your Swiftmend, which is another reason why I'm like, multiple Swiftmends just seems really good. You can't extend any major hot anymore, and having 2 Swiftmends means you get more trees, whether you're going into a tree or you're summoning more of these guardians to the ground. And you probably saw that when I casted Swiftmend. So basically all of your core heals just do more. Lifebloom applies Efflorescence to the ground and stacks. Swiftmend now will summon in this little Cenarian guy, and you can then use the super juiced up rejuvenations as well in order to buff up your overall healing. So that's like a significant drop off in keybind density. Again, like I said, helps them equalize the single target healing with Lifebloom to be more of a viable option in PvE. And in PvP, it opens options like Disentanglement, because you're getting Efflorescence on the ground basically for free now. And Efflorescence removes snares. Now, this mechanic is probably going to get nerfed, because this was the mechanic that Paladins had throughout the War Within that dominated basically the ladder entirely up to tournament level play, where your team was just like freedom to running at maximum speed the whole time. That's basically this mechanic now existing on your class passively. The downside before was it cost a lot of mana, you had to put it down, and that they moved out of it, but now it keeps respawning on the Lifebloom target. It's probably going to be quite powerful. However, in my personal testing, the healing from Resto Druid felt pretty low. And from some of the feedback from other players that were talking about, like, you're the hardest Resto Druid I've fought against. And most of the Druids just fall over. It makes me think that like Resto Druid's got to be kind of weak. If I'm coming in and like I'm holding my ground, but it's very hard, and all the other Druids are struggling and suffering a lot, that it's probably going to be pretty difficult. Now, I tried to go for a Wildstalker build. This is kind of like just a little bit more of my own personal opinion, but the Wildstalker tree is just kind of boring. It just feels like an extra layer of procs on all of your existing abilities. I would personally like if they kind of went and, I don't even know, like I would like it to just be like reworked almost, or add a little bit more flavor into it, because it just feels like an extra layer of modifiers pasted onto the rest of Druid that I'm not really paying attention to, or trying to interact too much with. Whereas the Force of Nature, making the Grove Guardians, the trees, summoning in extra Druid pets and things like that. This one feels at least a little bit more visually. Obviously, a lot of these Hero Town trees are just layering in extra effects, but I feel like your gameplay probably changes a lot more with Keeper, whereas with Wildstalker it feels just a lot more passive. It still feels a little bit kind of incomplete when I play it. It's just a feeling that I get, and I'm just trying to describe to you my experience. It just feels a little incomplete, like they did a first pass of, all right, let's condense these abilities down and remove these abilities, and then they got to do like a second run through of Resto Druid to get it going. Now, some other things is Heart of the Wild is changing massively. So Heart of the Wild is a 2-minute cooldown now. And if you use it in catch form, you basically cast Feral Frenzy. If you use it in Moonkin form, you cast Starfall. If you use it in Bear form, you get 30% more maximum health, and so you can use Frenzied Regeneration, right? But it's not going to make Cyclone faster anymore. So it's basically just either a survivability tool or a little bit of an extra juice to get some damage, similar to kind of like Way of the Crane style with Monk, except you don't get any healing out of it. That's another thing. I really hope that they make Resto Druid damage spells cost no mana. I think it's absolute travesty that if you're able to find time to put Moonfire up, it ooms you exceptionally fast compared to other healers. And the same thing goes for like throwing Wrathen or Star Surge. I really feel like every damage ability Resto Druid has should basically cost 0 mana, because it's already if you're able to maintain your healing output, you shouldn't be just like hurting your group and your team's success that you managed to find some extra time to do a little bit of damage. It feels like doing damage is almost punishing as a Resto Druid, and I didn't like that. I didn't like that at all. But the Heart of the Wild is definitely cool. Now, to get the Starfall, you do have to take Moonkin form, which obviously there's a lot of competitive talents into the Druid side of things on this side. And PvE, it's probably going to be fun, right? Because you're not going to get disrupted or stunned or swapped to like in PvP, where you can go Moonkin form and Starfall. But I think the Starfall component is probably not going to be as noticeable, at least in PvP. I did notice the cat form one, like you could start the game with a rake from stealth, get full bleeds up onto a target, and it's obvious that the cat one's meant for single target, Moonkin's meant for AoE, Bear's meant for like, I don't even know if it's of HP that you could like taunt a boss or something temporarily if your tank really needed it, or if that mechanic even is something that happens, or maybe you just need an extra personal CD to survive some massive hit of damage, maybe also that you could use Heart of the Wild as a component for that. But that seems to be the change for this, is that it's really not, it's not about Cyclone, it's not making Cyclone faster. You will notice your Cyclone cast speed very slowed down because all the stats are gone. That was something that I noticed right away, is that it just feels really slow to cast Clone. Trade-offs for that is that you can get PvP talents that make Nature Swiftness access to Cyclone again, which you didn't have in PvP situations, which could be very good in coordinated or certain compositions, and maybe not so much in others. Another thing is that they removed the Giga Tree, which I thought was surprising. So you can basically only play the regular tree again. The nice part about the regular tree is that while you're in it, it basically makes it so that all of your rejuvenations are super powered, and you can see that because it changes to this bright pink. So you don't need to be worried about using Swiftmend and then getting, the Soul to Forest buff. You can use your Soul to Forest exclusively on regrowth in this window, as opposed to just trying to make sure that you're maintaining big rejuves and you just spam rejuves on everybody. It seems like Efflorescence also has a lot more of a place, and the set bonus for this season is focused around wild growth, and that's why I'm probably going to fool around a little bit more with talents and try some other things out. Maybe it'll end up feeling stronger when I do that. But at the same time, I think it's their goal with these talents so that you can play pretty much almost any combination you want. You're not going to feel totally awful. So like, I should theoretically be able to play the build that I've come up with and, have a decent amount of success. But there's just a huge amount of synergies right now between certain things, and with the removal of other abilities, that is adding priorities to these new things that you're probably going to want to consider. I think the main thing is that it is not the same as it was in the War Within. It is not the same. You got to be ready for that. It's a lot slower pace of game. I will say that you're very durable personally. Maybe that's because of my stat allocation. Again, I think in the War Within, Resto Druids play very low versatility, at least in PvP. But here on this server, I haven't really done like the professions and gotten the crafted gear to try and get like full haste mastery type of stuff. So I'm mostly wearing just mastery verse. But I felt very tanky with the full mastery verse. But I think if you're somebody who likes cat weaving, going in and doing damage, I think it'll be a really fun healer in like 2v2. 3v3, it's still a little bit maybe too fast for it, and maybe it's a tuning issue, because my experience on other healers has been a lot more positive as far as like feeling like, hey, I can keep my team up and I'm not just like slowly waiting for them to die while I can't really fight the tide back. One thing that I do think maybe they should consider is that I still feel like it's weird that you can get Typhoon, Mass Root, or Ursul's Vortex. I just feel like that's like, I get like maybe Typhoon is meant for like an AoE crowd control in Mythic Plus situations, something like that. The Roots is obviously for like raid mechanics when lots of ads spawn and they get rooted. It's good in PvP situations as well with melee and pets. And then Vortex can feel really cool against things that you want to pin together in an area. So I see how these all have like core gameplay positions. I just feel like it's always been kind of strange to me that you can get Vortex and Typhoon, and they're both like knock DRs and they DR each other. I almost wonder if like Typhoon and Vortex should be with each other as opposed to Mass Entangle with Vortex. But like this little like utility part, considering like how much has been stripped away from other classes, was something that I was thinking that maybe this is something that could go in that boat. But my personal opinion of it is that I just have a negative bias towards Resto Druid, and I've kind of gotten bored of it over the years. Maybe that'll change, maybe with a little bit of better tuning. I think the main thing for right now that is making me turned off from it is that my damage abilities cost too much mana. It just costs too much mana. I don't want to be punished for being able to heal my team and find globals to do damage. If it goes live like that, where you're like ooming twice as fast as you normally would because you're just applying dots and you're just trying to do some damage while you're healing at the same time, then I don't think it's going to be the healer for me, unfortunately, if it ends up being like that. But other than that, I do like some of the core gameplay loops that they've done. But I do think it needs another pass, and it will probably get another pass. So make sure you hit the subscribe button. So when those patch notes go live, you'll be able to keep up to date with them. You'll be able to see exactly what's going on and be able to adapt accordingly. But that's my breakdown. Those are my opinions of the Resto Druid. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Does this look cool to you? Do you think it's a good direction for it? Lots of keybind reduction. Druid had a lot of them, so I think think it's fair that they've decided to do this as far as trying to achieve their goal of simplifying the classes, simplifying the UI, making it more entry level for a lot of players. I think it's all moving in the right direction in that regard. Now I think it's just about polishing up and fine-tuning things after that first pass through to make sure that you feel like you're rewarded for doing the right things with your playstyle. But that's it for this breakdown. Thank you guys very much for watching, and I will see you on the next one.